Hi, it's Dr. Betsy Greenleaf with a new season of Body, Mind, Spirit. So I'm so excited to be talking with you guys again this season. And we're going to start right off with speaking with nurse practitioner and functional and integrative medicine practitioner, plant practitioner, Melanie Cross. Thank you so much, Melanie, for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for
And
having me.
I'm really fascinated with this whole idea. I mean, I love integrative and functional medicine, but plant integrative and functional medicine, that's something I've never really actually heard of. So, how did you get to do what you're doing today?
So it all started I was in conventional medicine for 20 plus years and people weren't getting better. And I started having my own kind of health struggles as well. Nothing crazy, but it was just like, this isn't that much fun. And I've always been an advocate and a supporter of plant medicine. And while I was getting into my own kind of became my own client and getting in my own, figuring out my own stuff, I was like, oh, what if I add some plant medicine into this? What if I add some cannabis into this? And let's see what happens. And for me, it started with sleep. So I hadn't been sleeping for like 7 years, basically, at the time. My kids were 5 and 7 at the time. And it was just like that, I would fall asleep because I'd be so exhausted at the end of the day. But then it was like the slightest little thing would wake me up. And then it was that constant like negotiation on time. Like I can get by on 5 hours of sleep, counting the 2 I got before I woke up, and then that hour goes by. I can get by on 4 hours of sleep. It's going to be hard, but I can do it, and just like constantly going through that process. And so not sleeping, horrendous brain fog, and started feeling kind of anxious and depressed, which were newer symptoms for me. I was 38 at the time. And I was like, okay, something's got to change on this. And I knew if I went the conventional route, I knew what my answer would be, because I was working at the time, I was working in primary care and had been as a nurse practitioner at that time, 7 years in primary care. And I knew that story, how that would go. It would be like, okay, well, we'll check your thyroid, meaning we'll check a TSH, which doesn't check your thyroid. I would be told I was fine. I would be told this is just a part of the deal, getting older, having kids, and then handed my antidepressant or anti-anxiety medicine and sent them my way. And I was like, no, this isn't the way this is going to go. So I started with cannabis for sleep. And within a week, I was sleeping soundly, sleeping through the night. And I hadn't in like 7 years. And then while I was doing that, I, was digging into my root cause from the functional medicine side of things. So I was like, oh, I think other people are probably feeling the same and would like to maybe have this as well. So I found that like when you add the plant medicine piece to it, it gets you over that hump. Like I don't know that I could have dug into all my root cause of my gut health and like added one more thing on if I wasn't like, I had no energy to do anything. I had to sleep first.
I think that's so important because I think sleep is probably the number one thing that people can do to change their health. And we forget about it in traditional medicine all the time. And I mean, like I have patients, especially weight loss, will try everything on the, that exists. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, wait a minute, how are you sleeping? And then we look and they're like sleeping 4 hours a night. And I'm like, well, you're never going to lose weight if you're not sleeping. You have these chronic conditions like blood pressure, diabetes, inflammatory issues. None of that's going to get better unless you're sleeping. So
Absolutely. It's like when they talk about foundational health, like that's the foundation of all of it. And I agree completely. If you aren't sleeping, you can't do the other stuff. So when you add that, when I added the cannabis in and when I do that with my clients, you get over that hump, you get those wins. You're like, okay, I actually can feel better. And I know what better now feels like a little bit while we're digging into getting the root cause and getting that solved. So it just makes it a lot quicker. When you do the functional plant medicine, the plant medicine piece, I think it makes it more fun. And it's just easier. So,
I wanted to ask you about the cannabis. So, it's interesting with what's happening across the United States. I'm in New Jersey, and it's even though it's legally recreational, it's not available recreationally. So we're still dealing with a lot of here, at least, where we have to do it as a prescription, but other places it's recreational. So, how would a patient start out? Like, is that something that they should be just trying on their own, or is it something that they really should be working with somebody over?
well, so I'm in Colorado where it's been adult use and medical use for, 15 years now, 10, 15 years. Um, Cannabis isn't a one size fits all. I mean, you can certainly go out and try and figure stuff out on your own. I find that a lot of people who come to me are so curious about it. Maybe they had like a really bad experience in college or something like that, with cannabis and like passing out on a couch, and they're like, I don't even know where to go. Or they've never used it. So I have three groups of people, or they've never used it for like a medical reason. So, having someone to help guide you through that so that fear is out of there. It's not for everyone. There are some potential interactions if you're taking medications. And I want to help people have a, awesome experience with it, a safe experience, and figure out too, if it is the right choice for you to go down that route.
Yeah, I think that's so important because it was interesting when I first started prescribing in New Jersey about 10 years ago. I thought that I needed to know like each strain because I'm expected as a doctor to know about every medication I prescribe. But in New Jersey, it wasn't like that. It was like I would just go online and I'd be like, okay, you can have it. And that was it. But there's hundreds and hundreds of strains, and not every strain is good for each condition or each person. So it's really pretty fascinating.
It is, and it's totally customized, which is fun too. Like the strain piece is probably why you had that bad experience in college, or whatever. It wasn't the right thing that you needed for that moment. So, and also methods. Everybody what they're comfortable with, what different methods they're comfortable with, and they work for all specific reasons. So it's very tailored what the recommendations I help with people, and education, I guess, is the correct word. The education I give people on cannabis.
That brings up, do you use a lot of CBD in your patients too?
I do when it's so there's some people that come to work with me that don't want to use cannabis, whether for legal reason, like for a job. And sometimes we will use just CBD only products. Caution though, CBD only products, if there is still some THC in there, even if it's like CBD that you can get online, that can still trigger a positive urine test at a job. So I always like to caution people that way. So most of the time, since I am in Colorado and I have access to the good stuff, and I find that it works when you have THC in products, like for sleep, for example, that was needed for myself, and I find for other clients that it's needed. The more higher THC content is needed. So I don't use CBD only products as often as I do THC.
Yeah. And so, that brings up, what is CBD versus cannabis? Like, if you could give us a little bit of background about, we hear about all this stuff, but there are people that are like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So like, if you think of cannabis, like the big family, like the parent, maybe the parent plant, and then there's all sorts of different, cannabinoids. THC is one, CBD is one, and they are different plants have different concentrations of each. And there's lots of cannabinoids. Those are just the two that most people are familiar with. So CBD it comes from the cannabis plant, but they grow it in a way and now why it's legal, ish, I guess, across pretty much every state, is that it is from a hemp plant that has a higher CBD and 0.3% of THC or less. But it really is just the way that it's grown. And so CBD doesn't have the intoxicating effects that THC does. So people like it for that reason, or they're able to use it for that reason. THC has, and I like to use the word intoxicating and not psychoactive. You might hear that term, psychoactive, because CBD still does have a lot of properties for anxiety and depression and mood that are psychoactive in a sense. So they have all the different cannabinoids can work in a different way, and they work on different, to not get too nerdy. I get really nerdy on this, but
I do too. So.
Oh, good. I'm in good company. So they work on like different ways in the body with different receptors. They don't all work the same, and knowing what you need. And that's why it's really important, I think, to work with someone who knows the plants, so they can help guide you. So it's, getting where it works for you for what you need. And I find too that like I'll have clients that come to me and they're like, I tried CBD and it didn't work, which, very possible it isn't going to work for you. But a lot of the times, like if your gut health isn't in check, and your receptors aren't working properly, how everything is so interconnected. Your endocannabinoid system is just right there in there with it too. So like for myself now, I don't take anything for sleep. I stopped using, once I healed my gut, I didn't need cannabis at all for sleep. So, there's just different ways that they work for different reasons. And it's just so fun to help people find a way to get better and not get worse. Because that was like when I was in, I knew when people were coming to see me, what they needed was not what we could offer them in conventional medicine. And essentially we're making people sicker. And that's just not why we went into medicine.
That's something I sometimes get frustrated with when patients come into my office, because I think it's just probably just the wrong patients, but they come in, they're like, they want their medical marijuana card. And I'm like, hey, do you want the marijuana, or do you want to fix the problem that's making you seek the marijuana? And so I'll go through this whole, like you're talking about, a lot of this comes from gut health. And that was it, like 80 to 85, even like 90% of your serotonin, which is your happy hormone, is made in your gut. So if you're having anxiety, depression, it may be a gut issue, like you were saying. So what happens is, I think sometimes some of my patients love it and they're like, yeah, you know what? I don't really want the marijuana. I want to get to the root problem, root cause. Let's fix that. Some get annoyed and they're like, just give me my card. But I'm like, all right, well then I'm not the person for you, because, I really want to get to what the problem is. And I think why I bring that up is that marijuana is not the cure all. It's not like the, boom, like this is going to fix all your problems. That working with a functional integrative practitioner to help really figure out and balance things.
Absolutely. It's not, if you just hand out that card without fixing you're just swapping prescriptions.
Yeah. It's just becoming a glorified drug dealer at that point too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We'll come back and we'll talk some more about this after the commercial break.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
And we're back again with Melanie Cross talking about integrative and functional medicine and plant medicine. So yes, before the break, we were talking a lot about the different things with cannabis and CBD. I know everybody's different, and that everybody, like, different products are good for different people, but in general, what kind of conditions do you think really benefit from using these kind of products?
Sleep is huge. I think sleep and pain are really helpful, that I've had phenomenal results with people. Anxiety and depression are very helpful. And when we were talking about like the intoxicating and the, non-intoxicating, of the THC with the intoxicating piece of it, also, like sometimes with chronic use, you can have some memory issues with cannabis, which can be very helpful for PTSD, and used for that kind of specific reason. So working with folks with PTSD, it can be really helpful for that. And you know what, like just stress, as I'm sure you are well aware and your audience is well aware of how stressed we are, especially this last year and a half, like what this has done to our body, what stress has done to our bodies, not all the virus stuff, but what the stress has done. And I mean, like, I like to say, like, have you ever really seen a grumpy stoner? Like, cannabis can be so extremely helpful for stress and for joy and for laughter and just happiness.
Are there any problems that you see or things that people should be looking out for? Because I grew up on the age of this is your brain,
right?
This is your brain on drugs. And so, if you had told me back when I was in medical school that I'd be prescribing marijuana someday, I would have told you were crazy, because there's still that mindset of like, oh, it's bad. But, thank God we're learning so much about it and being able to use it as a medicine for good. But
yeah, I mean, I'm with you too. I'm like proud DARE graduate,
yeah.
The things that people need to watch out for are just using it in a safe manner. I think I'm not a fan of gummies, of edibles. I think those they have their purpose outside of maybe medicinal use, because the companies are getting better, but like dosing like edible to edible, it's so variable. And once you swallow that edible, you're locked in. So I'm not a fan of edibles. So I definitely recommend staying away from those, especially when you're first starting. And I always recommend people like start low, go slow, start low, kind of thing, with dosing. And so we do it in a way where it's not scary. And actually, like the way I guide people is like, you probably won't feel anything. Like that's the point. I don't want you to feel high. I don't want you to feel like out of control. So just being careful with what you're taking and the dosing, knowing if you're on any medications, as I was saying, it can interact with medications, like Coumadin, comes to mind. Not that you can't be on that medication and use cannabis, but you got to be consistent with dosing and get that under wraps there. Storage is huge. Making sure that especially like the edibles, they like say candy on them, or they are not they're the way they promote them. But any type of cannabis, like just like a prescription pain medication, I very much recommend people to have that stuff locked up away from kids, away from pets. Because I used to work in the emergency department right when Colorado was coming out with the adult use, and there were some bad situations in there where kids got into stuff and not good. So
I was thinking just with the edibles. So here, from a functional standpoint, sugar is probably one of the worst things that you could be putting into your body because it affects gut health. It's terrible for inflammation. So now you're taking a lot of these edibles are made into these sweet gummies. You're like kind of counteracting the whole idea of like trying to do this for your health.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's when I'm choosing products, I have vetted the companies pretty significantly. Colorado is not great at this, about providing a certificate of analysis, of a lab analysis on THC products that have higher THC content. They're like, we follow the guidelines, on mold and pesticides and those sort of things. So having a product line that, that has been vetted, and, don't be getting your stuff off Amazon or like at a gas station, or, you can get like CBD anywhere now, and they put it in everything. And it's a waste of money. It's a waste of your time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I see that, like, I'm always amazed that it's being sold at like gas stations And in general, when it comes to even supplements, even your regular vitamins, I tell my patients stay away from Amazon because they know that there's a lot of issues with fraudulent kind of counterfeit products that they might not actually be what you think they are, or they're coming from somebody that you don't know how it was stored. It could have been sitting in someone's hot garage and they just are mailing it out whenever there's an order. So I agree, like getting things from a reliable source is definitely the way you want to go. So,
and the extraction method too is a big one that like a lot of companies aren't transparent about that. The way they actually get the cannabis out of, or the CBD out of the plant, and what like residual solvents are left. So you might be like you're kind of back to like your point about eating gummies with your gut health. If you're taking CBD that's full of heavy metals, like, that's not a good idea.
I was thinking a lot, I get sometimes a lot of pushback from my patients about smoking the cannabis, and they're very concerned about inhaling it. What can you say about it to a patient that would be concerned about those things?
Well, inhalation is one option. And I agree, especially like the last year and a half, there was like a lot of, is this good do we want to be adding into our lungs? And I wasn't recommending inhalation, with everything that's going on. Tinctures can be a very good option. And inhalation is really quick acting, but it doesn't last as long. So, for like really like an acute pain or anxiety or, like a panic attack, it could be very helpful for that. But for something like sleep or, like aches and pains throughout the day, I find tinctures are a much better option. And it's a lot easier to take, and you don't have to, like, that learning curve is not as steep if you've never done the inhalation method.
That's one of the things that I'm finding so fascinating about this whole area of medicine is because marijuana was illegal for so many years, the researchers couldn't do research on it. So it's like all the research is just coming out now, which is fascinating. And one of the things I found out recently too is that when you smoke it, when you ignite the actual plant, you're basically burning off all the cannabinoids, like the CBDs and all the, like some of the health benefits, and you're getting left with just the THC. So you're just getting left with what's going to make you high. So I also try to, encourage patients not to actually ignite the product if they choose to do it, to inhale it, into I have them look at more vaporizers, which are heating it and kind of making a vapor out of the plant, as opposed to like igniting it. So
right, exactly. And then, but not to be confused. I also agree with the vaporizers, not to be confused with vape pens. Though those are bad news. I very much disagree with and don't recommend those.
Yeah. So if somebody is, I guess, like interested in starting, how do they start with something like this?
Well, you can reach out to me. I do free consults, a free call, and we can see like what you need help with and if I'm the right fit and if I can help you. And then we go from there.
Yeah. And then, going back to like the gut health and, so and I know a lot of this, what other plants do you use? I mean, we're talking a lot about cannabis and CBD, but do you find that there's other types of things that you use or fall into the plant medicine category?
There are lots of plants that can be really helpful. Different types of mushrooms can be very helpful. Different herbal plants, in the adaptogen space. It's limitless, and it's so exciting that this is becoming a little bit more mainstream. So people aren't like, oh, look at that hippy dippy, like, witchcraft crazy person over there. But really being open to the idea of finding something that comes from nature that can actually help you get over what you're needing help with, and getting at that root cause. To then, or getting, while you're getting at that root cause, it just makes it so much faster and so much easier. And like I said, so much more fun.
Is there anything that you can think of that I didn't ask you that you want the listeners to know about?
I think that plant medicine doesn't have to be scary. like I growing up in the time that I did, or maybe even with my parents' age, that it was just like, the fear of cannabis and the stigma of cannabis was just like beat into us, that it's, you don't have to be scared of a plant. There's a way to use it that is so beneficial. And if if you're interested, to reach out.
Yeah. And where can people find your information?
My company is called Crossable Health, Crossable Health. And so that's my website, crossablehealth.com. You can find me on Instagram, Crossable Health. I'm on Facebook at Crossable Health. And so those are the best ways where I'm hanging out.
Great. Thank you so much, Melanie, for being with us today. I also want to just bring up to listeners that not only do you have, hopefully you're listening to this when it's being premiered, but if not, we always have you can listen to the reruns. You can go back and listen to this again on a podcast and watch it on WYTV7. And if you're enjoying the programs that we're doing, please take the time to go to our website at wytv7.org and make a donation. Every little bit helps. And we use that donations not only to keep bringing you great programs, but also to help the community. And you'll be able to see on our website all the different programs that we're involved with, where we're reaching out and helping the community. So once again, Melanie, thank you so much for being with us today. Really, I could talk to you, like I said, I could talk to you for hours about this. I find the whole thing so super fascinating, and I think you're doing a great job with helping people.
Thank you so much. It's been really fun to be here. I appreciate it.